So our next little task is to download a file and a graphic. So I'm going to right click on this because if I left click, it's just going to open, it's going to actually try to display the web page. So you have to right click and I'm going to do save link as. This needs to go into the lesson 4 folder. On my particular system, it is a challenge to find the right document folder. Here it is. Let me open up lesson 4 is where it's going to go. And we'll click on save. And then the vertical swirls graphic is going to go in the media folder. So we're going to right click, save link as. Now you may see a little different menu depending on the web browser you're in. Could say save as, save target as, save image as. Okay, I'm using Chrome, so it says save link as. As long as you see the name of the file, you're good. Okay, it's saving it correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and open up media here and save it right into media. Okay, and once I have them downloaded, I'm ready to move forward. You can see that the first task is going to be to add a couple references to some Google fonts. And as long as we're out here, I'm going to show you, and there's written directions on this, but what I usually do if I want Google fonts is I just basically key in Google fonts, and then this is what I get. So I select it, and you'll see there's all sorts of font categories over here. So if I was, interested in handwriting fonts, okay, I kind of get rid of all the check marks except for handwriting. Oh, that's kind of nice. So, oh, no wonder I picked it before, okay? So if I click on the plus sign here, you see that the family is selected. Okay, and then if I click on family selected, this is where I get the link that I can copy and paste. And this is also where I get the font family property and the values. Okay, and you can just highlight them, Control C to copy. Okay, so it's pretty easy to use these Google fonts. Okay, so now that I've gotten this far, I'm going to copy these 2 lines. And we're going to come over and move this out of our way. And we're going to come over in here. And let's open up Humble and Kind. And if you're wondering, yes, this is the lyrics to the song. I'm not a big country fan, but I do like this song. there are certain songs that I like, so this is one of them. So here we've got our lyrics to our song, and I've copied those links to the Google fonts. And it doesn't really matter, if you put them above title or below title, just as long as you've got them in the head section. Okay, that's where they need to be. So I've got both of them in here. And let me save. For this particular exercise, we are going to be creating an external style sheet. Okay, so we are linking those fonts into our regular page. And then we're going to go to File and New File. Now, right away, we need to save this as a CSS file. Because once we do that, VS Code is going to know it's CSS, and then it displays things in the proper colors. So we're going to go to File and Save As, and we're going to put it in the CSS folder. And we're going to call it music.css. And you'll see right now it thinks it's plain text, so we are going to change that to CSS. Because this is a CSS file. Okay, so music.css is what we want to call it. And then we are going to enter some CSS. So you don't have to put an opening and a closing style on this, Okay, it knows that it's a CSS file because we saved it as that type. And so we can pretty much just start keying in the selectors, opening and closing curly brace, and all of the property name value pairs. So we've got body, got my opening and closing curly brace. So we've got text align, center is what we want. And what that's going to do is it's going to center all of the text in the document because we're applying it to body. And then we've got background image, colon. Okay, we are giving it a URL and we are giving it a relative URL. Okay, so from the location of this CSS file, where is the graphic file that we want to include? Okay, well, we put the CSS file into a CSS folder. And if I come over here, you'll probably see this a little easier. So here is our CSS file. So we need to go up a level so that we are at lesson 4. And then we need to open up the media folder. So we have to code that in here. So to go up a level, it is .. That puts us at lesson 4. And then we need to open up media. So media is our folder. So we're going to put a slash after it. And then we just give it the name of the file. Okay, because once we've opened the media folder, that graphic file should be there. And then at the very end of the line, you do want your semicolon. Then we've got, so now we've got an image. The default is for the image to repeat. It tries to copy the image across and down. Not what we want for this particular image. So we're going to say background, repeat, colon, no repeat. So that means we're just going to display it once. And we can position this image. So it doesn't have to be at the default location. And where we want this image to start is in the top right corner. Okay, that's where we want it to align. So we're going to say background position, colon, and we want it at the top, space, and we want it on the right. Okay, then we've got our font family. And we are going to be using one of the fonts, the Google fonts for this, and it's Brie Serif. So you can either do a single quote or double quotes, it doesn't matter. And then after the closing quote, you do need a comma, and we're going to give it the generic serif at the end. And it is always a good idea to include the generic, because if for some reason it cannot display the font you specified, it still gives you a little control over what font displays. And let's see, we're going to specify a background color. And snow is the shade of white that we're going to use. And what I like to do is kind of save the changes and view it as I go. I do think that that is a good practice to be in, because it's easier to catch an error if you're viewing it as you go. If you key everything in, you could have a lot of typos, and it's harder to find everything that way. So what we just keyed in is affecting the body. So let's open this. We're going to use my trusted, oh, yeah, we'll use Google. And let's see, I can see I have a problem already because it is not displaying. Oh, I know why. We haven't connected it yet. All right, in order to test this, we're going to have to jump a little bit ahead and connect it. So to connect these two, over in Humble and Kind, right above the closing head, okay, we are going to add link href equals double quote. We need to open up the CSS folder and connect the music.css page. Okay, and the relationship between them is style sheet. Okay, so this link needs to go below the other two. Okay, because the style sheet is using those Google fonts, so you do need to put it below them. Otherwise, it won't know about them. So make sure you do the Google fonts above it and open up your CSS folder. Let's save this. And then let's go out here. Let's reload this. Oh, much better. Okay, we're not quite done because you might think, oh, that looks terrible, it's overlapping. Okay, well, what we're checking right now is we're making sure we've got everything centered. We do have our graphic. We can see that we've got snow for the color, background color, which is a shade of white. It's not repeating the graphic. It does start in the top right. So everything that we have specified is displaying. And don't worry about overlapping because we're going to fix all of that. So let's go back over to music.css. So body is done. So after the closing curly, now I'm ready to do my next selector, which is H1. So we've got entering the curlies for H1. So for this one, my font family is going to be another Google font called Anton. Common there. Now, if for some reason Google Fonts is down for whatever reason, I can't find it, I want it to use Arial, which most people have. If they don't have Arial, we're just going to go with the generic sans serif. For the font size, I'm going to use 3EM. So it's going to be 3 times the size of the default for H1. So whatever the default was, it's going to be 3 times bigger than that. For the color, I'm going to use steel blue. And because I do like the text shadow, I'm going to apply that one that makes it look a little bit more 3D. So just using 1 pixel for horizontal, vertical, no blur, and the black color. And I'm going to put a little space between the letters. So we're going to do letter spacing. Let's put 10 pixels between them. Just puts a little bit more space. 10 pixels is not very much. And let's increase the height of the line. We're going to double it. So we'll make the line 2 times its default size. So let's save. Now this is going to affect all of the H1s. So if we come through here, you can see we've got an H1 here, and I believe that is the only H1 that we have. Okay, so it's the title that we should see the change on. So let's reload. Okay, and you can see that the change was applied. Now, if you reload and the change isn't applied, then you're going to want to come over here and look because there is a problem. Usually it is a missing semicolon or you have a property misspelled. Those are very common problems. Now we're moving on to H2. So below our H1, we're going to have our H2 selector. And for this one, we've got the font size, and we want it to be 1.25 EM. And we've got the font style. We want italics, background color. Now you might be saying, oh, background color, that's tricky. So what this is going to do is it's going to color the line, that line or the space below the text, but it does it for the whole width. So we want steel blue. And since we're changing the background color, we are going to lighten up the text to white. Now this is for H2. So let's save this. And let's come out and take a look. Okay, so right now this is where H2 is. Okay, so we've got that steel blue, and then you notice that the text is now changed to white. And it should be just a tad bigger, okay, about 25% bigger than it was by default. Okay, so let's come back over here. And I did not notice italics, so maybe that is the problem. Come over here and check. There we go. One little problem like that, and it doesn't work. So that is why it is easiest to check as you go. We want italic and not italics, no S in that. Now, right below our H2, we're going to do HR. And we are going to set a height for that horizontal rule. Otherwise, nothing we do shows. So we're going to make it nice and tall, 20 pixels. And then we're going to change our background color to steel blue. So this is going to be a nice thick separator. Save. And we'll come out here. Let's reload. Okay, so we have the HR up there, and you can see how 20 pixels looks. Moving right along here for our paragraphs. We are going to change the line height to 1.2 EM. So they're going to be about 20% bigger. And we're going to change, make sure the text alignment is center. We're going to adjust the letter spacing to 5. So just a tiny bit more space between letters, not a lot. And we're going to increase our font size about 20% bigger. And we're going to save. Okay, so right away you should be able to see that change to the spacing and the size. That's pretty noticeable. And you might be thinking, oh my gosh, it's still overlapped. The next section you learn about layout, size, and space properties, and it will all be fixed. No worries.